Welcome, one and all, to the second episode of this little podcast I have going on. I did change the name. Welcome, one and all, to the Unofficial Podcast, the second episode, second week I'm doing this. I'm your host, Dallin Smith, your humble host, Dallin Smith. On a Tuesday, it is the 3rd of November. It's election night here in our great United States of America. Hopefully, everything went according to plan as things go with that. I'm not going to get into politics on here. You may have noticed a couple things just to get into it before we get right into everything else. That I have changed the name of the podcast. This was the plan originally all along. I decided to just make like a pilot episode, and then now we're going to be going by the Unofficial Podcast. The Unofficial Podcast is going to be me talking about BYU, going to be talking about the Broncos, going to be talking about the Utah Jazz. Not the Boise State Broncos, but the Denver Broncos. I was thinking the Cubs and Real Salt Lake maybe at some point, but I'm not like the biggest fan of baseball, and I have no idea how long Real Salt Lake is going to be in Salt Lake. So, I mean, if Real Salt Lake gets bought out or something, obviously it might be a point where I'm actually going ahead and talking about them at some point. There's no face cam this week, unfortunately, for the YouTube channel. I apologize. My phone is not charged, so I can't actually do things like that. So we got a little bit to talk about today. We got some BYU stuff. We got a little bit of Jazz stuff. We got the Broncos on an insane comeback that they had. So anyway, let's get started, shall we? BYU played Western Kentucky on the Halloween nights of 2020, which is, kind of a weird sort of scenario. It was like a full moon and everything, I want to say. I think it actually was. I think people were like making fun of stuff on Facebook from what I could see. But anyway, BYU won this game 41-10. I was 4 friggin' points off. I was 4 points away from getting it correct. And I have to preface this, I did not watch the first half. I was watching a movie with my wife. I thought I recorded the game. Apparently I didn't. So, yeah, I watched the second half, though, which was trash. So I saw 6 of the 41 points. But I did watch the highlights of the first half, and BYU just looked unstoppable. It wasn't even like last game. Like last game where they kind of let Texas Tech score, and then all of a sudden they took over. It was just boom right from the start. Algier 2-yard touchdown run. Dax Milne 23-yard touchdown pass from Zach Wilson. 5-yard run by Zach Wilson. Katoa a 42-yard touchdown pass from Zach Wilson. Isaiah Reck a 4-yard, which was an insane throw, by the way. Touchdown pass from Zach Wilson. The third quarter was where it got weird. Western Kentucky went on like a 10-minute drive, and BYU stopped it, and then the first interception since the first game, thrown by Zach Wilson. They get a 3-yard touchdown pass. Joshua Simon to Tyrell Pigrome. If you ever listen to this, I'm sorry if I got your name wrong. Then 2 field goals, and the game was over. I want to preface this by talking about the second half. I just have my thoughts on it. People were just saying, oh, it was a garbage second half. And it was. I can agree to that to an extent. But come on, folks. You really think BYU is trying hard in the second half of a game they already won? They were up 35-3 at halftime. They had no real reason to play a ton in the second half. They're trying to get mentally ready for Boise State, which is one of the biggest games, I think, of all those young kids' careers. So obviously you're trying to not play as hard so you can get prepared for that game. And, we'll have my thoughts on it later on. But anyway, that's just my take on it. And BYU wins 41-10. They move up to 9th in the AP and coaches. I was pretty surprised. I thought they'd move up to 10th because there was a top 10 team that lost. I can't remember who it was. I think it was Oklahoma State, I want to say. Yeah, it was Oklahoma State. They lost to Texas. So I figured BYU would move up a spot, but I didn't think 2. But they moved up 2 spots in the rankings. They're 9th now, the highest since 2009. That 2009 team I'd mentioned so much in the first episode, and it's good. Now BYU is now respected nationally, which is pretty crazy to think about, because we are not going through the schedule that we had at the beginning of the season at all. And I looked at it. I'm not going to go like way into it, but there were some tough games on that schedule. I mean, a lot of tough games on that schedule. But unfortunately, we don't get to see that. But I mean, just us picking on the little guy is crazy to me, that the AP in the college is no AP in the coaches. Excuse me. I don't know where that came from, but the AP in the coaches poll gave BYU that respect to not only be in the top 10, but to be in ninth, which is pretty crazy. The last time they were in this top 10 like this, they were 7th, and that was 2009, leading into the Florida State game that depresses me every time I look at the season breakdown for that 2009 BYU team. Anyway, that kind of concludes that. That's my analysis of the game. BYU just played really well, and it was a blowout. There's not much more to say. I mean, even the defense in the second half for BYU played really well. I mean, 10-minute drive, and then they stop Western Kentucky on the goal line. That was amazing. Like, I don't even care that they scored points. To me, that was like one of the highlights of the game for me. Like, even though at the end of the day, because, Zach Wilson throws the interception and then they score a touchdown, it didn't matter to me. I was like, dude, it was sick. It was crazy because Western Kentucky had kind of figured a couple things out, and they stopped making mistakes in the second half. But BYU just willed for them not to score on that particular drive. It was pretty crazy. So the only real burning question I have this week for BYU is, which game could BYU add to make them playoff contenders, or even just New Year's Eve 6 contenders? And I have a few. I have a couple. The one that I was thinking most about, and I thought I was crazy to think this because nobody came up with this, because Big Ten and I think Pac-12 and a couple of others have stated, and it's just the COVID regulations with this year, so you can't really blame them for this, is playing like an outside Power 5 conference team that's in the top 10. And I was thinking you could play Cincinnati the week of Thanksgiving, like the 28th of Thanksgiving. That would be an interesting matchup, because I think if Cincinnati's really kind of looking into trying to make the college football playoff, it makes sense. And it makes sense for BYU if they're thinking, okay, we can make the college football playoff too. Because the winner of that game, and they go undefeated, it's a moot point Friday, which we'll talk about that in a minute. I'm nervous about it, but anywho, it would make sense. Both teams are undefeated at the time. They're both top 10. It could be like the game of the year, and the winner of that game probably could make not just the New Year's Eve 6, but I think the playoff. And I think it's because there's going to be a one-loss team in the top 4, and one of those two will be undefeated if they both go one of them goes undefeated. So I just think it makes sense. There's also Army. If you want to make a New Year's Eve 6, just schedule Army, beat them. They're a ranked opponent, so you got 2 ranked opponents, 2 potential winners of the conference, and then Marshall's another one. And the same thing, you get 2 conference champions, 2 ranked opponents, which we'll get into that when we talk about the next segment. But yeah, BYU could schedule one of them and potentially could be heading to New Year's Eve 6. Look, I think BYU is set, if they go undefeated, to be a New Year's Eve 6 contender. That's just my opinion. Because there are certain rules that they're going to look at. But here's the thing. And I thought about this Saturday when I was watching Clemson play Boston College. Look, Clemson almost lost the game. They won the game by 4, and they're still number 1. I believe in the rankings. I don't think they dropped that much further in the rankings they would have lost, to be honest. And maybe I'm crazy, but I think that because the circumstance. Trevor Lawrence has COVID. So if Trevor Lawrence has COVID, how fair is it that they don't have their best players? You know what I'm saying? So, and I understand that the Pac-12 and all that's in there, in the mix now, and everybody's playing. But I just think with the circumstance that's going on, BYU is doing everything they can with their schedule. And if they go undefeated, I think they deserve to make New Year's Eve 6. That's just my opinion. Other people have different opinions about it. If you have a different opinion, let me know. I will consider to look at that opinion and see what I think. So, and one of the inspirations, this just leads to the next segment, is one of the inspirations I have for this channel is a lot of the Zone Sports Network. Our very own Jay Catch worked for the Zone Sports Network. And I love the guys at the Zone Sports Network. I like the morning show. If I'm going out to get food, I'll listen to that show. And the big show with Gordon Monson and Jake Scott. Here's the problem. I like Jake Scott's takes a lot. I'm not the biggest fan of Gordon Monson's takes, though. I don't know what it is I don't like about his style of writing or like his takes on stuff. And it's fine, some people like his takes and he does make some interesting points on stuff. But I just think they're the wrong way to go about them, I guess. Like, there was this one time with Gordon Hayward, he made like a mean-spirited post about it. Like, we don't need him anymore and all this other stuff. And maybe I took it the wrong way. But there's just sometimes I'm like, why are you writing it like this? And there was one, I think it was him, but I don't remember, so I'm not going to say it was him 100%. There was somebody after the UTSA game that said, maybe BYU isn't as good as we thought. That was the header of the article. I didn't read it, but that was the header of the article. You're going to get people who hate BYU reading that, and you're going to get people that like BYU reading that, because it is a catchy as heck title. It's very clickbaity and things like that. I'm sure it was him, but I'm not going to be 100% it was him. And I totally disagree with that, especially looking at the season. So you can listen to the big show on 1280 The Zone. This is not a sponsorship, by the way. 1280thezone.com is like a podcast. And if you go to the first hour of October 27th, on a Tuesday, I was listening to this because I was getting in the car, going to school and doing my thing with school. I've been heading to school a lot lately because of a couple things. They're talking about BYU. If it was something to the degree, are we like satisfied as fans if BYU just wins, picks on these easy opponents and wins? And look, I'm gonna preface this right now. I am fully invested in the season, and I think it's awesome the attention BYU is getting up to 9th. I love the hype. But I said this last week, it has been a boring season. Because here's the thing, like, I didn't even have to watch the first half of the Western Kentucky game. I watched a movie with my wife, and then the second half I was like, oh, well, BYU is going to win this game. Like, they're up 35-3, and I knew they were going to win anyway. So that's the way it's been boring. However, if we look at Kurt Herbstreit talking, and we talk about ESPN really hyping up BYU, it's been awesome. Like, the reason why I say this is because I feel like ESPN, with the teams I like, and I'll get to that with the Broncos stuff in a minute, because even just national media in general doesn't like the teams I like the Jazz, the Broncos. I think the Cubs was like the only one for a while. Well, they had to talk about the Broncos in 2016 because they won the Super Bowl, but they just don't give the respect. It's so annoying sometimes. The Jazz lost to the Nuggets in the playoffs this year. And game 1, Donovan Mitchell has 57 points, right? They were talking about Jamal Murray the whole time. The entire time. But didn't bat an eye until the end of the game. Oh, well, look, Donovan Mitchell has 57 points. We got to talk about that now. It's like, I get they're winning the game, and I get they won the game, but give the man some credit, dude. Like, for real. Why is it that, like, the teams I like, they don't like? You know what I mean? And then Kurt Herbstreit is talking about BYU on College Game Day. Heck yeah, I'm excited. So there's two things about this that I didn't like. Is Gordon Monson is saying, should we just schedule this mediocre team, or should we go back to a conference? I think going back to a conference right now would be a waste of time, because here's the thing, my thought was BYU should definitely just go back to a conference because it's ruining recruiting, all this other garbage, blah, 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 blah. There's a ton of stuff that I could go into, but we'd be here for days if I went into that. But he said something to the degree of, should we go back to a conference or just do the week schedule they've done this year? And I'm like, no. And Jake Scott hit it right on the head. You're going to lose ESPN as a sponsor because they need to have those big games in. The thing that sucks about Friday is it's on FS1. It's not on ESPN. So ESPN doesn't see a dime from that. So they're only getting the games that BYU is playing on ESPN. And there's the only interesting game so far on the schedule has been Houston. And that game, like, it was a good game. It was a great game up until the fourth quarter when BYU just turned it on and won the game. And now we look at Houston, and Houston's because that's the thing, folks. That's the thing I look at with Boise State. Still don't know how good they are, because Utah State could be trash, and so could Air Force. So why am I talking about how good they are with two games? I don't know anything about them because of that. I know BYU is really good because they've played against, all these different teams and blown them out. So there's tape. There's a ton of tape on BYU. There's 2 games worth of tape on Boise State. So, that's my whole thing with that. And it's a weird tangent I went on just now. But yeah, I disagree with that entirely. And I think BYU, the only thing I agreed upon with what Gordon Monson said was he said, I think BYU should spread out the ranked opponents. I 100% agree with that. I hate when we just stack the schedule and then we're 4 games lost because we scheduled 4 games and then the season just isn't fun. It's not fun. It's not fun to lose. It's not fun to look at it and go, okay, we could win this game against USC, but if we lose, that sucks. And then they go and play a worse opponent and lose. Last year. It was so annoying. But anyway, my point is, no, BYU is not going to do that. I personally think interesting matchups are a very key selling point, not only to your recruits, but to your fans and to your, maybe not necessarily to your students. I don't know a ton of students at BYU, so I can't speak to that, but definitely to a fan. As a fan, I'm intrigued that they are going to play Tennessee. I'm intrigued they're going to play USC. I'm intrigued they're going to play Nebraska. I'm intrigued they're going to play those opponents. At the same time, the one thing I did not agree with what Jake Scott said was, he said that he doesn't care if Kurt Herbstreit, I'm getting his name wrong all over the place, is saying something to the degree of, talking about BYU. Just talking about BYU on College Game Day. He's like, I don't care what he has to say. Are you joking? So, okay, so when Utah got second in the NCAA and beat Alabama, and they talked about Utah, you weren't excited about that? And they were basically in the same conference that BYU was talking about. There were 3 in Mount West back when Utah did that. There were 3 ranked opponents: TCU, Utah, and BYU. And Utah beat the 2 ranked opponents. This is what I think BYU has to do this year in order to actually, get to the playoff contention. to try to be playoff contenders. They have to play a top 10 team. So they have to beat a ranked opponent and beat a top 10 team. Okay, that's what they did. So you weren't hyped for that, you're telling me. But you are hyped that until last year, Utah has kind of, I'm not saying struggled, and this is not a stab at Utah. I really could give a crap less. Okay, like I could give a crap less about Utah, honestly. Like, it's not like a rivalry to me anymore. It doesn't matter anymore. It was getting to the point where we were just another opponent. Honestly, they were just another opponent. That's why they're dropping us from their schedule, because they think we're mediocre and, we're just another opponent. We're another team that they can beat. So that's my take on that. Okay. I'm not going to talk about that anymore. Okay. But Utah had kind of struggled, and even struggled to start. BYU didn't struggle like mightily through independence. They went 10-3 in their first season. 10-3. And I have the references to prove it. Utah went I think 8-4, 8-5. And then went 5-7 back-to-back years. Well, BYU went to bowl games every single season, except one. And that was 2 years ago. So come on, man. And again, he kind of mentioned that, so I'm not gonna badmouth Jake Scott for that. But he mentioned that. But at the same time, so it's like, okay, if Utah is last year, they were in the running to try to make the college football playoff, I think they would have made it had they beat Oregon in that Pac-12 championship. I think they would have done it. I think they would have made it to the playoff. So are you honestly going to sit there and say that you weren't hyped about that, but you were hyped about the interesting matchup that could have been? Come on, man. I disagree with that entirely. There's a saying my stepdad used to say, you can't have your cake and eat it too. In this case, I think BYU can. We can be excited for this amazing run and then get excited next year for the intriguing matchups. It's just the way it is. And that's the thing. I've never felt like BYU has had a difficult time with being an independent. They've scheduled pretty balanced, except I think the beginning of the season, where I think, I agree with Gordon Monson. I think BYU needs to start making it more spread out. You could have probably the same amount of opponents, just spread it out. Why do you need to bang your head against the wall and lose a ton of games and then have your season be lost? Just doesn't make sense to me, man. It doesn't. We'll get off that kick. That's going to be a long segment, I think, but we'll see. Now we're going to preview probably the most important game, in my opinion, in BYU school history, football history. BYU Boise State, the big kahuna, coming up on Friday night. I believe it's 7:45 is the kickoff. It's on FS1. I'm excited for this game. This has been a circle game, even when they changed their schedule, because I figured if Mount West was going to come back and play, we're going to play Boise State. This is a rivalry game. The last couple, I think, have been 7 points or less the past couple of games. I think all but maybe 2 games have been decided Boise State BYU by maybe a couple of points. Excuse me, I'm sorry. There was that 7-6 win Boise State had. The Boise State game I mentioned last week, which I guess 10. BYU won by 11 then, but it was, come on, it was a last second touchdown. So technically BYU won by 4. And if Bronco Mendenhall had it his way in that game, then BYU were won by 4. So it doesn't matter anyway. But it's been super close every game. And this game I don't think is going to be any different. This is the first time, interesting stat, BYU Boise State has played when both teams have been ranked. That is nuts. That is pretty crazy to me. Because I thought there was a time where they both were. But now I look back at it, it's always been Boise State that's been right, and BYU hasn't. So, and maybe vice versa. I don't remember, but or both haven't been. I think that's the case. And I dubbed this because Jake Hatch mentioned on his podcast, the Locked On Cougars podcast. Check it out, amazing podcast. That Boise State BYU is the biggest game in program history in a long time. And I do agree with that 100%. What I think it's bigger than that. And I'm getting in my radio important voice, so y'all better listen. I think BYU, the reason why I say this is the biggest game in program history is because before BYU's glory days, I think it was 72 that I saw today, was when Lavelle Edwards was the coach and things finally turned around. But like they were kind of picking it up late 60s, early 70s. So for basically 3 decades, we'll say, they were a powerhouse school to play. They just were. They won national championships. They were in the discussion for the New Year's Eve 6 every year. They didn't lose very many games. I think even that 2001 team, I think they lost just the last 2 games of their season. So that's pretty crazy. But I think if that 2001 team would have went undefeated, there you go. That would have been the last time they were in a New Year's Eve 6 bowl game. I think it was 95 was the last time. I don't know though, because the thing about it is I don't know how New Year's Eve 6 worked before now. Like I know one of the bowl games is going to be the PlayStation Fiesta Bowl. And I think that's, if BYU gets there, I think will be probably one of the key ones that they go to. It's going to be a slugfest. It's going to be lower scoring. It's going to be final drive or final stop type of football. It's going to be defense. It's going to be offense when necessary. It's going to be one of the best games college football is going to have this year. I really believe that. And I am nervous as heck for it because it's like I said, the reason why I say it's the most important is we're trying to get back to those glory days. And if you go undefeated and make that New Year's Eve 6 bowl game, you're solidifying it almost. You're going to get more recruits. You're going to get more money. You're going to get all this stuff from being in New Year's Eve 6 bowl game. Not to mention if you win it, which BYU I think is more than capable of winning a New Year's Eve 6 bowl game this year. It's a big game. It is the single biggest game in program history, I think, just for that very reason. Trying to get back to that national dominance. I've already said, I'm not saying BYU is going to be the next Clemson or the next Alabama. Probably not. But I could see them being the next, like, I don't know who's in the top 10, like Wisconsin or something like that. If they go undefeated and get to a New Year's Eve 6 bowl game this year, this is what we're pulling for. I want them to make the playoffs, but it's kind of out of the question, like I said, really without that next game. They need to have a ranked opponent, or they need to play a team in the top 10. Unfortunately, a lot of the teams in the top 10, besides I mentioned Cincinnati, they are not going to play a team outside. It's because of how the conferences are working this year. But yeah, I just, in my eyes, I can't think of a bigger game. Like even the BYU Utah games have passed, where it was going for the Mountain West Conference Championship or to win the Royal Purple Las Vegas Bowl. It means it is spit compared to this. I'm going to be honest. It's just, this game is so monumental for this particular season and for this, what BYU has been building on for the past 19 years to get back to that. It's crazy, dude. I've never been part of a season where this one game can make or break everything BYU has been trying to work for a long time. That's why I dub it the biggest game of BYU history. So, what are the keys to the game? I think BYU needs to just keep up their offensive dominance. I think the big thing for me is they need to try to force more turnovers. Maybe test the corners a little bit. Show some blitzes to that good quarterback of theirs. Run the ball with Algier and Katoa so it can open up the play action pass. And just Zach Wilson's got to be Zach Wilson. And I hope he's cleared out that mishap a couple of years ago. I was so pissed at the end of that game when we lost the game against Boise State. I hope he's cleared that out and is like, okay, we're going to just go out there. This is a different game. We're going to go play it. That's how I feel. Excuse me. Boise State run the ball effectively and lead in the run and pass. And I think stopping Zach Wilson for them is going to be key. The biggest key of the game. Because, and it's like, duh, you got to stop the best player on BYU, one of the top 5 best players in the country. Well, okay, like, it's easier said than done. So, but if they can do that, they're probably going to win the game. But I think in the same token, if BYU stops their offense and BYU's offense is going, it's going to be a blowout. The problem is I don't see that happening. I think it's going to be a defensive struggle. And we're not going to see BYU get in the 40s. We're not going to see Boise State in the 40s. And it could be different. Like, this game surprises me every time they play it. Like, I didn't think the game I went to, BYU was going to even get close to 30. They scored 35. So, yeah. My prediction is I still think BYU is going to win the game. They're going to win 21-14. It's going to be much less scoring than people think. I think if BYU could score effective as they have been, it'll be enough to win the game. And if Boise State can score less than they have lately, it's going to bode tremendously. If Zach Wilson, like I said, can just redeem himself the way he played in Boise the last time, that will prove enough that BYU is good enough. And plus, if they can get Cincinnati or Army or Marshall, as I stated earlier, could seal a New Year's Six bowl game or even a possible playoff game. So that concludes most of the BYU stuff. Obviously, I still have the big question of the day, which you kind of heard in the beginning. So, yeah. Let's move on to Jazz stuff. We don't have too much stuff to talk about with the Jazz. There was a purchase by a BYU fan, actually. A new LDS family. Ryan Smith of Qualtrics purchased the Utah Jazz, I think, for like $1.6 billion. I think it's a good purchase. I love Gail Miller. I love the Miller family. They've done a tremendous amount of good for this state and for the Jazz in general. But I think she wasn't super into it. So I think Ryan Smith being a little more into this team because he's a fan is going to bode well for the Jazz. And the fact that he has a higher, bankroll. Okay, now you can probably sign Rudy Gobert to a max deal and still keep Jordan Clarkson and still keep Donovan Mitchell. So, I mean, there's a lot of things like that. But I think he will do wonders because I think he'll know the frustrations of being a fan and he'll be in control, so he'll be able to fix it. So I just think this is going to do wonders for the Jazz. I'm super excited, and I can't wait for the season. It's supposed to start in a month or so. So we're going to have the day before they play just a special, maybe even a live on YouTube podcast of the next season. It's going to be great. I'm so excited for it. It's going to be awesome. Anyway, that's all the Jazz stuff I had. So let's talk about the Broncos. I've been waiting for this one all day. Let's get the box score up there. The Denver Broncos got their first home win this weekend on Sunday against the if I call them the San Diego Chargers, I'm sorry. I grew up, they were in San Diego. I'm sorry. The Los Angeles Chargers 31-30 on an insane comeback. Because if you look at the box score that I'm looking at, it's all Chargers first, second, third, and then all of a sudden Broncos stuff. They were down 24-3 at one point. And I still kept watching the game, 6:05 left. And then Phillip Lindsay goes up the middle, scores a touchdown. Then, then we got the touchdown from I think an interception thrown by Drew Lock, then an interception by Callahan, and then a touchdown throw from 9 yards to AO. I'm not gonna say his last name because I don't know. It's hard for me to look at his last name. It was a 100-yard drive. Holy freak! Okay, I don't even know if that's true, but yeah, it looks like it is 100-yard, 9 plays, 100 yards. Dang, dude, the offense was playing that on Sunday. Jeez. Then Chargers kick another field goal. Drew Lock passes a deep pass to Deshaun Hamilton for 40 yards and a touchdown. And I'm just going to preface this right now. I don't get the hate. Maybe we'll talk about that at some point in the podcast's future. I really like Deshaun Hamilton. I don't understand why people hate him so bad. I get that he dropped a few balls in the New England game, but yeah, I think he's pretty good. So that's just my opinion. Another field goal, which put it to 30-24. They go on a 59-yard, 14-play drive, lasted 2 minutes and 30 seconds, with the pass interference going to Lock to AO, and then Lock throwing to KJ Hamler for the touchdown, 1 yard, and then the extra point won the game. That game was probably the best game since the Super Bowl win, I have to say. Look, there's been exciting games, but there hasn't been too many like good games that the Broncos have played where it was like last second. It was just an amazing game, an amazing comeback. And I thought it was just great. I thought the Broncos dug deep. If you listen to interviews, they were arguing at halftime, and Drew Lock really kind of stepped in as a leader and said, "Look, we gotta make plays. A lot of it's on me." And they just went out and played. And also the legendary KJ Hamler saying, "This is where legends are made." And they went out and he scored the game-winning touchdown. His first touchdown of his career, by the way, with no sweeter first touchdown, I don't think, in NFL history for a guy. So congrats for him. And then, so I've been watching, if I'm repeating a lot, I've been watching a lot of the Rich Eisen show, which he repeats a lot, and watched Dan Patrick's show a little bit. I watched Colin Cowherd, who said the Broncos were going to be amazing. Pfft. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. That guy's so fickle with his opinions. It's so stupid. They said the Chargers just lost the game. What? Was I watching the same game? They were up 24-3. They were putting the pedal down. I don't think they took it off the gas. I think Denver just stole the momentum from them. Come on, man. Like, are you kidding me? That's what I was talking about earlier. My teams never get respect from the media. It's so annoying. It's like, come on, they were down 21 points. You really think that the Chargers just, we give up? No, I don't think that's the case, dude. I think Denver played really good defense and they played spectacular offense. That's what won them the game. They won 21-6. They outscored them 21-6 in the fourth quarter. So you're telling me that it was just the Chargers gave up when they had a 98.5, I think like a 98.5% probability to win? You think that they're just going to give it to the Broncos? Like, are you serious? I understand there's a stat like they've done this 4 straight times this season, but it's like, really? Give the Broncos some credit, dude. And people are saying like, oh, well, they stopped the pass rush and all this other stuff. No, he was still getting hit in the second half and he threw a pick. Denver just kind of dug deep and won the game. That's what I saw. And maybe I had my orange goggles on, but no, that's what I saw. So I saw, like the first half of the game, I had my stepmom on Skype. And we're like, we're the new Browns. We suck. We're terrible. This, and this. And then the second half, boom, they exploded. And I talked to my father-in-law last night. My father-in-law is not impressed easily. I have to tell you. I sit next to him and watch Jazz games all the time. He said, it looks like you guys got a quarterback. Okay, so yeah, so a fan respect, but not these other guys respect. I just don't get it. I think Dan Patrick probably had the best take on it. But still, I'm like, come on. Denver won the game and deal with it. That's all I'm going to say. Like, they won the game. Jeez, dude, it's just so annoying sometimes. And now we got to talk about two things that are driving me nuts. One, because Denver won't do it. Because they're paying Melvin Gordon way too much money. And because it's an argument that happens. So let's talk about this first. Let's talk about Drew Lock. The dude is 6-3. Sure, his ratio for passing touchdowns and interceptions has been kind of garbage this year. It's 4-5. But he had 3-1 this weekend. And I see this Sunday against the Falcons it going up. I think he'll have more touchdowns to interceptions because we're playing one of the worst teams in the league. People they want this Brett Rippon guy to play because they're like, oh, he won his first game and he didn't have time to prep. It was against the Jets. It was against the Jets. I think anybody with a half decent arm in 4 days could have beat the Jets. Come on, man. He threw 3 picks, and he could have had 4 if the one guy wasn't paying attention and Jerry Jeudy didn't jump over and catch the ball. No, not Brett Rippon. Drew Lock is the guy. He went on the craziest comeback yesterday, and I get Philip Lindsay was the guy that started it. But you cannot deny not having Tim Patrick, not having Cortland Sutton, not having those key guys, 2 rookies, and a guy everybody's been bashing on, Deshaun Hamilton, comes back down from 21 points and wins the game, and he's not the guy? Like, are you out of your mind? That should be enough said there. And I already mentioned when he went into the locker room, he said a lot of this crap was on him. So if that's the case, what are we talking about? There's no discussion. Not at all. The past 2 years, and I think it was 3 years. 3 or something years. No, it was 2 years. The past 2 years, there was a streak Denver went on where they didn't score 30 or more points. Besides the Jets game, guess who's been part of 2 of those? And probably the biggest reason for 2 of those. Drew Lock. And I'm not going to count the Steelers game. But the kids should be 7-2. The Broncos should be 4-3 right now. And I think you're going to be 400 after this weekend. But again, what are we talking about? There's no discussion. None. Everybody just says Brett Rippon went in and won his first game in the Meadowlands against the Jets. That's not an argument. That's just stupid. It doesn't make sense. And people got mad at Drew Lock because he threw 2 interceptions at the end of the Patriots game? That's not on him. That's bad play calling. There was 3 minutes left. You have one of the fastest runners, I think, as a running back in the game right now. Give it to Philip Lindsay or give it to Melvin Gordon. He's got a big body. He can get through a couple guys. We didn't waste their timeouts. And the one interception, I argue, wasn't his fault. They weren't on the same page. And the receiver was supposed to turn around and he kept going up the field. If Locke would have realized that that's a touchdown, boom, game's over. And they're like, he's not the guy. And four passes in that game were dropped for touchdowns. He could have had a 4-touchdown performance with no picks. The Patriots wouldn't have even been in the game at the end of the game. So again, I ask, what's the discussion? What are we talking about? It's a no-brainer who your guy is, at least for now. Drew Lock's the guy. And I think he's going to continue to do more. I think his biggest problem is he's young. That's not a bad thing. And also, the fact that he's working hard to get better, I'm okay with that. Somebody commented because I try to, on this Broncos forum that I post, is my thoughts on the game. I try to give like real insight to the game. And I just simply put in all caps, Drew Lock's the guy, deal with it. And somebody replied down below and said, oh, he reminds me of Cutler. That's okay. Cutler had some talent. He just didn't work very hard. If Drew Lock is a Jay Cutler and he works on his game, I'm perfectly good with that. We're in good hands if that's the case. Again, I'm asking for like the 5th time. What are we talking about? What is the discussion? What is the argument for having a different guy other than Drew Lock right now? There's not one. You can't tell me that because a guy played against the Jets one game with no preparation against the worst team in football, he's the guy. You can't convince me. And some guy said, well, Drew Lock's backup. He might be, but he's the best quarterback we got right now. But for right now, he's the guy. I don't want Brett Rippon playing. I don't want to see that other guy playing. I don't even know his name. I think it's Dixon or something. I can see why he's 1-9. But there's no discussion. None. Drew Lock's the guy. And I have beaten that horse dead to the point where I think it's in the ground like dissolving right now. So I'm just not going to talk about it anymore. If you think differently, fine. Like, that's your opinion, but I don't agree with it. I really don't. Just from what I've seen from Drew Lock, he's a great player, and he's going to be a great player. I think you got to give the kid some time. It bugs me so much, and this is a different tangent to go off of, that people give up on these players so easily. They're babies. I'm 27, right? I can't imagine going out on a football field or on a court and playing a game that big. I can't imagine it. Donovan Mitchell's 24, and people were giving up on him, and he had one of the best playoff runs I've ever seen. You know, so Jamal Murray, but yeah, he had one of the best playoff runs. It was great. It was some of the best basketball I've seen between two teams. Two players. Not two teams, two opposing players. So why are we giving up on Drew Lock? Just because he threw some bad passes? Final thing. Final time. There's no discussion. No argument that can change my mind. Drew Lock's the guy. Thank you. Now we can move on to Phillip Lindsay. I think he should be the starting running back. I have Melvin Gordon on my fantasy team, and he's gotten me double digits once, and that was against the Jets. One of the worst defenses in the NFL. Come on, man. Like, Phillip Lindsay, the play that spark plugged everything, there was a hole. It was huge. And then he picked a different one, and it was smaller than he was. And he burst through this hole, scored a touchdown. He's smart, because he knew if he went that way, it's wide open from there. Yeah, he had 6 carries for 83 yards and a touchdown. Give the man more carries. Give him 15. Give him 20. I don't care. He should be the running back. First and second down running back. And then if you want to, put Gordon in for short yardage stuff. I think Gordon, although he helped on the last drive, he was a hero in the game. It's a trash can. He's played so bad. It's not even funny. I got 4.7 points from him yesterday, and I was supposed to get 10.7. Come on, man. I don't care how much you're paying Melvin Gordon. It's Philip Lindsay who should be playing the game. Come on. Again, there's no discussion. What are we talking about? Philip Lindsay is the guy you should have at running back. End of story. All right, let's get to the good and bad to the ugly of the week. The good, Zach Wilson had another stellar performance again. He wasn't as accurate, but hey, the performance was still awesome. A couple of top 25 teams and top 10 teams lost. It was amazing, and it feels good to finally be in the top 10 again. The Jazz are in great hands with Ryan Smith, and I'm so excited for that. The Broncos' epic comeback was amazing, and it solidified who the starting quarterback is. The bad. Come on, man. A 10-minute drive? BYU? Really? Why do you do this? Come on. The ugly. Are you kidding me, Zach? You get on the same page with your receivers, man. That pick should never happened. Luckily, that's the only bad stuff I had for the week. I think everything is pretty good. Oh, and that trash can. Okay, let's go with a couple things. The trash can second half by BYU and the trash can first half by the Broncos. Guys, you got to pick it up in both halves. I don't care who you're playing. The Broncos, if they pick it up in the first half, are winning this game by a lot more. If the BYU's picking it up in the second half, they're also winning by a lot more. So, come on, man. Get on the page with your receivers and play better in both halves. How about that? All right, let's get to the question of the week. Who is a better coach, Kalani Sitake or Bronco Mendenhall? This has been on my mind for a while, for the most of the week, because I wanted to make some interesting points on this. Mendenhall kind of took BYU out of the dark ages, where I think they had like 5 straight where they didn't go to bowl games. And then BYU since 2004, 2005, something like that, has only not been in the bowl game, been in a bowl game one time. And that was the 4-9 season a couple years ago. So that in itself is pretty impressive, but I think Sitake gets a lot of crap for that 4-9 season. And I'll get into it. I don't think there was a bunch of reasons why he should have gotten the flack he did, but there it is what it is. Sitake took a team that was at the end of Bronco Mendenhall's recruits. He had crappy advice, getting crappy recruits, and had to basically, a couple of years ago, put a team together with foam and duct tape to barely get to the Idaho Potato Bowl. And I think makes him a better coach. I think he's more personable. I think he gets to the players a lot easier. Look, I talked about it before. Mendenhall on the Kainakua interception return for a touchdown that I witnessed, he wanted him to go out of bounds. Like, let him have some fun, dude. He's like, go out of bounds. You don't listen to your coach. That was always the thing that bugged me about Mendenhall. I think Sitake always takes the blame on himself, which is good, because then the players will do that. Mendenhall never did that. He would always blame the players. And the thing that annoyed me in a lot of games, except somehow in the Boise State game I went to, they never had timeouts with like 2 minutes left. So he is a terrible timeout manager. That's all I'll say with that. But yes, Mendenhall, I just never felt like he could get to the players. He was never a guy that just kind of touched the players like I think Kalani does. And this might come across as bad, but like, he's your football coach. Why does Mendenhall feel the need? And I think Satake does a good job of balancing this. Why do you need to be their seminary teacher? Why can't you just be their football coach? You know what I mean? That's why I got super excited that Satake was going to sign with BYU. And I was excited that they signed him last year, because I didn't think they were going to do it. Because there was all this other dumb stuff about it, and it just, I don't know, it was just, yeah, it's just stupid. It was just stuff that I don't feel like necessarily need to be in discussion. He's been a really good coach. The 4-9 season excluded. Like, that was just a bad team. That wasn't his fault, I don't feel like. And Mendenhall, he had every opportunity in the world to go undefeated, but they would get not in the big games. It was expected. That's the thing about Mendenhall. It was expected he won the big games. But Mendenhall would, I feel like, not necessarily be content, but they would get to a game they desperately needed to win and just lose it. You know what I mean? Like, there was a time in that 2009 season where we could have had a New Year's Eve 6 bowl game, but then they lost to TCU. Even after one loss, they were like, yeah, BYU still got a shot. They still have the resume. They got to beat TCU, though. Didn't happen. We lost 38-7. And there we go. We're back to the Pioneer Las Vegas Bowl. So, yeah, it's hard for me to pick, especially since Satake has not been around for a long time. And Mendenhall was basically the first coach I watched BYU with. So I'm going to go with Satake only because of the fact that I think it proves it this year. He's better at recruiting. I think he gets to the players better, and he's not one to point the finger at the players that there is an issue at hand. So yeah, that's the question of the week. It was probably a weaker discussion of the week, and I probably made some stupid points that you probably don't want to even hear, so it doesn't matter. Next week, BYU is on a bye, so I don't know that I'll talk about anything BYU. It's probably going to be a short podcast next week, but I will go ahead and I'll talk about the Broncos playing against Atlanta. Oh, I didn't even preview that game. Let's just do a little preview. Broncos are winning like 35-10 because I just think Atlanta's terrible, and they shouldn't. It's stupid that they are supposed to win the game. They're 2-6 and they're terrible. Stop it, betting lines. You're wrong. 35-10. Broncos are going to win that game. But yeah, next week I'll talk about it, and then we'll get you ready for the Las Vegas Denver Broncos game on Sunday, and then we'll go from there. I hope you guys have an incredible week. Let's cross our fingers. BYU on Friday, and go Broncos, go Jazz, and go BYU. Not Boise State Broncos, Denver Broncos. See you guys next week.